Hello and welcome. This week I'm sharing several projects that focus on ways to use scenic paper. Sometimes we get these papers that are really pretty when we buy them, but we get them and then we get them home and then we're not really sure what to do with them. I have a couple different packs that I've purchased over the years, and I've kind of gotten them home and I'm like, well, other than just, cutting them into a rectangle and sticking them on the front of a card, which is fine. But other than that, it's like I don't really know what to do with them. So I've kind of come up with a few different little formulas that have made it a little bit easier for me to use these papers. And I just thought it would be fun to share some of those ideas and see if they're helpful to anybody else. So I will link, I already did one video this week and I uploaded that. So that was using this little formula here of adding a big, bold border to break up that scene. Here, this is an example from a different paper pack where I used that same formula and, did the big border to break up that scene and added a few die cuts. So I'm going to be showing you today a second idea using this paper right here. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you missed my intro video, I will link that so that you can go back and check that out. But I just wanted to kind of go over this really quick again. I am using the beautiful gallery 6x6 paper from Stampin' Up. I think these are really pretty. But again, they're kind of one of those things that it's like, okay, now what do I do with these? They have such a specific scene. I don't want to cover them all up, and I want to be able to still kind of enjoy some of the, the scene that the artist put on there. So this is where I kind of just came up with some different ideas. So that beautiful gallery suite is still available right now as the time of recording this. It's still available on Stampin' Up. So I will link all that below. It comes with, the entire suite comes with two really pretty stamp sets, an embossing folder, some embellishments. You'll be seeing some of that throughout this video. Really beautiful set, and I do encourage you to check it out. So my second idea here kind of focuses on those papers that you really like that scene and you don't want to hide too much of it. You don't want to chop this up too much. So it's kind of preserving that scene but helping to break it up just a little bit. So that's where I did this little frame over the top. I kept the scene as a big rectangle. I didn't cut it, much of that down, but I added a frame in a coordinating color over the top with just a few little embellishments off to the side. So let's go ahead and recreate this card today. Again, this paper, just so you can kind of see, it looks like a beach with some boats out in the water. You can see land and some buildings back here, and then a really pretty sky. Now, two of the colors that are in this collection are Secret Sea and Cloud Cover. So I'm going to use my Secret Sea as, the back layer. I'm going to just use a piece of cardstock and put that onto a card base. This could also be an entire card base where you just maybe add a lighter color panel inside so you can write your note. But I want to be able to put this onto a lighter color card base. I'm using a nice dark color just so that this paper, which is a little bit lighter, really stands out against it. It gives it kind of that nice frame around the outside, kind of pulls your eye inward, I think, to that nice scene. So now we have to decide, well, this is 6x6, and I only have at the most 5.5 by 4.25 because I do A2 size cards. So where do we want our scene to be focused? Do we want to keep this side? Do we want this side, or do we want to kind of cut it down the middle? So I'm going to just grab my paper trimmer, and I think that I like these boats because then you can really tell that it is water. I also really personally like being able to see these rocks and things over here on the shore. So I'm going to try to keep as much of this side over to the boats as I can. So let's measure here. If I did 4.25, which I'm going to do a little smaller, but if I do 4.25, that's going to leave some of the boats, and it really leaves a lot of these rocks here for us. Still leaves a lot of the really pretty sky. It will cut off some of this kind of more like orangey color, but there's still some over here, so I'm okay with that. And we'll have a nice strip of paper. You know, maybe there's something else we could do with that, or it does leave that really pretty, you know, the back, which is kind of the three-tone or like an ombre look of some brown tones. So we'll have that to work with later. So I think I'm not going to trim this side first, and, you know, so that I'm focused over more, I'm going to just use this as my border and cut it at, let's see, I probably did like four inches before. I'm going to leave it just a little bigger even. I'm going to go 4 1/8. Yeah, I'm going to do 4 1/8 for my width this time. So I'll have just a little bit smaller border this time, just to change it up. And then again, I want to preserve those rocks on the bottom. I'm going to actually pull this down so I can use the top of my trimmer. I like using these for my 5 and something inch measurements. So instead of 5 1/2, I'm going to do 5 3/8. I'll try that and see what that looks like. Keep those for later. And let's see how that looks on our base. It just gives us that nice little border. I like that. I'm going to leave it like that. So we can actually go ahead and get this adhered down. And I'm just going to use tape runner. You can use glue or whatever your favorite adhesive is. I love the back of this. It's kind of too bad, in my opinion, too bad that they didn't have these on separate pages so that we can enjoy this nice nautical scene and have some more of that brown paper to play with. So, okay, and then to do this frame, I like to use any kind of stacking die. So, you know, if you have something like rectangles, the perennial postage, circles, you know, squares, anything like that, I am using these dies from the Branching Out. I have this Branching Out stamp set and dies. It came with a whole bunch of these that all coordinate. Oh, the Everyday Arches is a really good one for doing this as well. So I like to take 2 sizes that are right next to each other. This is not the biggest size. I went down to the next size and then the 3rd size. So it's not the biggest, it's the next 2 sizes down. And then put them together on a piece of cardstock, blade side down, and then just kind of get them lined up the best that you can, so that you see about the same amount of spacing in between both of those frames. I'm just grabbing a little bit of low-tack tape so that I can tape these down so they don't move. And I'm going to use a couple. I like to go kind of opposite of each other. Okay. So using low-tack tape or a Post-it note, something like that, is going to be really helpful, so you don't end up with a border that's maybe wider on one side and narrower on the other. Now I'm going to take this to my die cutting machine and I'll be right back. Okay, so I ran this through my die cutting machine. The frame actually was stuck to my cutting plate, but I was going to show you what you end up with here. So we'll peel these off. Here's your 2 dies. You do end up with this nice little inset. So you save that and you can use it on a different card. And then the outline of that or whatever is left, you can either throw it or maybe save it, you know, for something small. But here is what your cute little frame looks like. Now you can, and I did on this sample one, I don't know if you can see that, I layered this up. I cut a few extras with some very vanilla cardstock, glued them all together, and it gave me a little bit taller frame. I'm not going to do that today, but you know, you can certainly kind of play with that and see if that's something you like. It makes it a little thicker, a little more stiff, a little more substantial, but it looks just fine. It's really pretty. When you don't do that, I mean, you can certainly just glue this straight onto your card. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, and then I like to just use a little bottle of glue with a really fine tip, or kind of a micro tip, I think they call it, and run just a little bead of glue all the way around. And if you find a glue that says that it dries clear, that's always helpful, you know, for gluing your die cuts. If a little bit of it seeps out, it's not a big deal. Okay, and we'll just get that centered the best we can. All right. Ooh, little glue coming out there. Okay. And there is that card with the frame on it. And then we'll just add our other little embellishments. Now, I did go ahead and die cut a few of these things ahead of time. I have this kind of leafy, I don't know, I felt like this kind of looked a little bit like seaweed. It's a grass piece that was in with the Gallery Blooms dies. So it actually comes with this Sweet Collection, as well as this other little piece that I cut. I thought that looked kind of like something you might find along, you know, some water somewhere. So let me just grab, these are the two dies that I used for these two. And then this piece, I thought it kind of, I used it on yesterday's card, kind of looked like a log or whatever, but I thought it looked a little bit like a piece of driftwood. Again, something you might find along some water. So we're going to use that. And this came from a newer set called Nature's Symphony. And then lastly, for our sentiment, I am using one of the dies from the Perennial Postage set to put our little happy birthday on. And you'll probably notice here, this one is a little bit smaller. I trimmed a lot of these down. So we're going to trim that so that it kind of fits right inside of our frame. All right, and I am going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment before we do anything else. Again, I like to use my VersaFine Onyx Black ink for sentiments. And I thought about changing up the sentiment, but, you know, seems like you can never have enough birthday cards, especially kind of a masculine feeling one. This one could definitely be, you know, for a dad or grandpa or uncle, you know, brother, somebody like that. You know, we always have lots of flowery cards, it seems like, but it's a little harder to find something that might be appropriate or that you would want to give to someone who would like something a little bit more masculine. So, okay, so let's go ahead and start getting the rest of this all put together. Okay, now honestly, I should have waited to put the frame down. I had forgotten that I was going to trim the edges of these little die cuts so that they would fit, you know, kind of either right under or right along the edge there. So I'm going to show you a little trick. I pulled back out the center piece. I also have the outline, so I could use either one, kind of whichever I think is going to be best. But I'm going to try this with just the inset. And let's see. I probably want, you know, I still want plenty of the boats showing and plenty of the, like the shore. So I'm going to just I pulled my die cut over to kind of where I want it. And I'm going to lay this inset piece on top, take a pencil, and just kind of trace where that edge would be. And then I'm going to just cut it with my scissors. And because of how this die is designed, the pieces kind of want to come apart a little bit, so you have to hang on to them. I mean, it's not all the way, it's connected here still, but it kind of separates right there. So you just have to be a little bit careful. And then I can just put that right down there and glue it directly to my card front, and it'll be just fine. And the rest of this is going to kind of be covered up as well. Now for my sentiment, I feel like I had it up a little bit too high on this one. I'm going to pull it down just a bit on this, and it is going to cover up more of the wood, but I'm okay with that. And I'm going to just do that same little trick here. I just want to make sure I don't cut the bee off over here. So let's see where we're at. Yeah, it's getting a little close. So I'm going to just nudge it over just a little. Same little trace that and cut along the line. Okay, so doing just a few little tricks here for this card. And then this nice little foliage piece will come along here, and we can, you know, kind of have that right there, and the smaller one down just a little bit further. So I'm going to start gluing these down because they're just moving around too much. Let's see. There we go. Pick that up without getting my fingers in all the glue. Okay, oops. Well, okay. And I think actually I'm going to pop this up, the sentiment this time. I had popped up, well, I popped up the wood on the last one because I had that frame a little bit thicker. I'm going to do just a couple dimensionals on the back here. And then I think that will give me a little bit of wiggle room if I want to kind of tuck some of this behind. I think I might do that this time, just for something a little different. It's fun to change things up. So let's get a little glue back here. I like to have movement with my different, you know, foliage die cut pieces. So I usually don't glue all the way out to the tips. I let them kind of, you know, just be loose so that the card has a little bit of movement and interest. And let's see, do I want to do the same? Kind of tuck this under. I think I will. Again, just a few little dots on the bottom here. See if I can get that tucked under. There we go. Okay. All right. I like it with those little modifications. Let me get all this out of the way here. And that is our card with kind of the full panel of that scenic paper and just the addition of the frame and a few little die cuts. So I think that's kind of a fun way to still really enjoy that nice piece of Scenic Designer Series paper, but you can add some of your own little touches, some of your favorite ways to embellish. Now, just like I did yesterday where I pulled out a completely different set of Designer Series paper, I wanted to test my formula out to see if this would work on other collections as well, besides just this beautiful gallery set. So I'm going to actually zoom back out just a little bit here. Again, just like yesterday, I'm using the Splendid Autumn Designer Series paper. These are 6x6 pages. These were from Stampin' Up, oh gosh, at least a year and a half ago. They're really pretty autumn papers, and I haven't done a thing with them. You know, I got them and I was just kind of like, okay, well, now what? What do I do with these? So, you know, now that I've kind of come up with this, with a few different little formulas, I'm testing myself out and seeing if I can use the same formulas that I'm showing this week on a different set, something completely different. So this is what I created to go along with this formula today. I really liked that scene. It looks like a little road kind of going back into this little nature-esque area. Some really pretty, you know, wild flowers and weeds and things, and then some really pretty trees that are kind of those fall colors, and you can see back there's hills and things in the back. Very pretty. I didn't want to completely cut up this scene necessarily, but I wanted to add a few little touches and make it a little bit more, I guess, you know, put my touches to it. So I added this Cajun Craze frame to the front, and then used the Changing Leaves die for this leaf here, and a different die set for that leaf. I'll tag it below. I can't think of it offhand. And then this was in the Changing Leaves set as well, this kind of oval label and a little note to brighten your day. So I think that worked out pretty nice to be able to use kind of that same template. I turned it, of course, landscape instead of portrait. So just to give you another little idea of something you can do with maybe some of those little bit more difficult papers to use. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video and picked up maybe some new ideas and ways to use some of your maybe more difficult to use papers and things like that. I would love to see what you're creating. If you do share on social media, tag me at Leah Faye Handmade. Stick around all week. I am sharing several different ideas of ways to use, some different formulas you can kind of implement to use some of these types of papers in your paper crafting projects. So come back again tomorrow for some more. Thank you so much for being here and have a great rest of your day.